So delightful to see all of you here. And I know this has been just stupendous. I am up 9 floors. I can feel the energy from this conference as it rises. And every one of my staff has just been thrilled to be able to share this place with you and to have a chance to be part of such an extraordinary conference. So I just thought I'd say a few words about the relationship between Ford and the work that all of you do. We know that building a democratic and equitable society requires a bedrock of care. As Aijen always says, care is the work that makes the other work possible. And I'm really proud to say that Ford's commitment to this issue is a very long one. We have supported efforts to establish care as a civil right since 1970. This includes our early legal support that led to the Lafleur Supreme Court decision, which is a key step toward protecting the rights of workers who are also caregivers. And over the last 20 years, the Ford Foundation has put more than $100 million into care advocacy, which we're extraordinarily proud of. And I know it's a lot of the work that you've all been doing. And this movement has won so much in that time, from minimum wage and overtime for care workers at the federal level. When federal action has been stuck, as it occasionally gets these days, the movement has innovated at the state level, including winning domestic worker bills of rights and paid sick leave policies across the United States. We know that patient long-term care has been essential to this progress. And with the leaders in the room today, we have an opportunity to discuss what comes next and how to ensure that the movement has the long-term structural funding it needs to ensure that America cares. So please join me in welcoming this extraordinary group of panelists. I feel like no one really needs for me to introduce Aijen to you, at least if you've been paying attention, have been awake at any part of this conference or all of your life. To Aijen's left is Courtney Leimkuhler, the co-founder and managing partner of Springbank, which is a venture capital firm that invests in the new care economy, the future of inclusive work, and the next wave of financial progress. And Peter Kaldes, who's further to the left, is currently president and chief executive officer of Next 50. Prior to that, he was president and CEO of the American Society on Aging, the nation's largest association of diverse professionals in the field. And so with that, I'm going to start with questions, because it's an extraordinary group. So Courtney, maybe we can start with you. What have been the most impactful care investments that you've made? What lessons do you have to share with us?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it speaks to something that I'm sure has come up a lot over the past couple of days, which is different type of investment for different type of kind of care problem and solution. We're a venture fund, so we're typically investing in early stage companies that are for profit. But one of the first investments that we made in care, and I'm looking at Anna, who's here, is a organization for founders building in care and family technology called FamTech, which is now an industry association led by Anna Stephanie. Many of you know, and that is kind of what got our work going. And honestly, it was what we use as almost a diligence process to say, is there enough activity in this space? Are there enough really sharp founders who want to use tech, who want to build in caregiving? And very much the answer was yes. And sort of as a result, we launched this venture fund. I think some of the most impactful investments we have, just a couple of sort of 4 examples in the portfolio, a company called Wealthy, which is a care navigation platform, which is now serving employees as an employee benefit at a number of kind of Fortune 50 companies and hundreds or if not thousands of others. That's had a wide-ranging impact by delivering it through the employer channel instead of making it direct to consumer. So that's been really impactful. We have a company called Brisk Teaching, which is actually a tool for educators. And you think about the sort of burden that's borne by teachers and the administrative load, and half their time is not spent with kids. That's an AI-first tool, but it's used now by 250,000 teachers, and is an incredible sort of adjacent to care solution. A company I was telling you about off stage, Careful, I know AI was the subject of the prior panel, has built sort of the first AI model that can detect elder fraud, and is sold through banks and financial institutions. And not only is it detecting fraud, but really interesting, I was saying to Peter, the financial missteps that can actually reveal something like an Alzheimer's diagnosis many years ahead of a medical diagnosis. So there's some really cool ways that, when I think about care, it penetrates so much of society, and there's so many places to innovate that have that downstream impact.
It's really helpful. Peter, I wonder if I could ask you, I mean, we often think of there being a binary between public and private investment, but of course in this field we need both. And as you are better suited than anyone I can think of to answer this question, but how do you think about the relationship between the public and the private and the role of different kinds of investment in care?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is such an important conversation. And how many of you think it's expensive to get old? Yeah, so at Next 50, we're a private foundation. We're looking to change that. Our North Star is to make it more affordable to get older. And to your question, historically, in our space, in the space of aging, government has been basically the sole provider of capital. And I think given our changing policy landscape and the role philanthropy needs to play and step up and play more of, we actually need to think of ourselves as investors, not just traditional grant makers. And so I think when you think about what we fund, we like to call it a polycapital approach. We do impact investing and sort of apply this sort of impact lens to market rate returns. We also do traditional grant making. And we also do sponsorship and partnerships across and advocacy across our entirety of our work. And when I think about our most successful investments, it's basically because of one of two reasons. One, we actually listen to the community that we want to give money to, because at the end of the day, we're simply moving money for greater impact. And two, it's partnering with non-traditional actors in the aging space. So in this case, it's not government. It's private actors. It's VCs. It's advocates. It's people who touch on aging or maybe don't even see themselves being involved in aging, but catalyzing that kind of capital so that everyone's thinking about aging, because hopefully we all are successfully.
So Ajin, as someone who I think of as one of the most entrepreneurial in the private and public sense, people in any field, as someone who has always got her eye on impact today and impact tomorrow, I wonder what, as you just sort of look over the landscape and think about how to scale the work that you're doing, thinking about how to have impact, what are the models that you're sort of seeing on the horizon? What new things should we be on the lookout for?
That's so nice of you to say that.
My job is just to tell the truth, actually. So.
Well, just being here in New York City, I feel like is such a huge opportunity on the childcare front, for example. And it's a great opportunity to think about how to leverage different types of investment to get to scale and modernization, really. Like, there is a mayor-elect who ran on universal childcare. There is a ecosystem of organizations here in New York City that have been working on strengthening the childcare infrastructure and getting to universal childcare. There is a history of universal pre-K and other initiatives that have been building blocks over time here. Is Rebecca here from New Yorkers for Childcare? She was here earlier. Anyway, I wanted to shout her out because she's been kind of, the seeds of this have been planted over so long. And now there's kind of a coming, a ripening and a moment for everyone to kind of dive in. And I think for philanthropy, there's a huge opportunity to support the kind of research and pilots that will help the New York City government be successful. There's obviously a huge role for private sector companies who can also help drive innovation and technology as a part of that plan to increase access to childcare. I mean, there's so many roles in a catalytic moment like this. And I think the more we work together in the poly way, I think the more impactful the outcomes are going to be, and the more scaled with soul it will be. to have everybody at the table together. And I think around the country, there are these states where we're in implementation mode, or there's been new ground broken, like in New Mexico, the first state in the country to make childcare universally free for everyone. There's been over a decade, 12 years of investments on the part of community organizations, workers, faith-based organizations, congregations, and philanthropy to get to the moment where the state was ready to take that step. And it's being done through a tax on fossil fuels in the state to finance it. And so there's just like this idea that there isn't the money to do big things is such a falsehood.
Yes.
Fake news. And I think we see that when we can come together across these silos and come together in moments where we can see immediately how outsized our impact is going to be together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Courtney, I wonder if I might ask you just about what you've seen in the field, because you were such an early investor in care. So, and I know it hasn't been around that long, so not to, but if you could just talk a little bit about what you've seen over time, the changes you've seen in the fields. It would be really interesting to know what your perspective is.
Yeah, happy to share. One thing I observe, which I think is a good indication of where this has come and how far it's come, as you say, in a pretty short period of time, is I don't know how many people saw the full-page ad in the FT this weekend from Apollo Global Management. It's one of the largest asset managers in the world. They took out a full-page ad in the FT, which sounds very dinosaur-esque, but they did. And it is a series of what-if statements that are about the future, around how many companies are still in the private sphere versus public markets. How many companies that have at least $100 million of revenue are actually private versus public. And their point is, like, what if the world of investing is changing a lot and our understanding of it is not keeping up? And three of their what-if statements are around, what if longevity is increasing but preparedness is not? What if the silver tsunami is not coming, it's here? And what if people's financial retirements have a big hole in them? And to me, that is so revealing around the force and speed with which these trends, which are really all center around the care economy as well, have kind of come to the fore of traditional mainstream finance, and it's happening very quickly. So I think that is just a huge positive, that it's no longer, I run a venture fund. It's a $40 million fund. It's much smaller than Apollo, right? We're not doing early stage investing. I think we're playing a very catalytic role, but it only works if the follow-on capital downstream comes. It only works if you can get this company into the public markets, or you can fund it through, multi-billion-dollar valuation. So for us, one thing that we have always really aspired to is hopefully to see the future, but not see it too far ahead of anyone else, right? Because you need this additional capital to kind of come in and believe that there are these big opportunities. And that kind of gets to the second thing that has changed a lot in the past 5 years is when I first started meeting with founders that were building in care, most of the founders were like me. They were mostly women. They were mostly, had done something in their career. They had found an interesting problem. They had quit their job and they wanted to solve this care problem that they met. And that lived experience is so invaluable. But it also is hard because that person does not have a technology background, does not have Silicon Valley connectivity, does not know how to recruit engineers. And it, I think, posed a challenge to some of the early innovators in the space. And now what we see a lot of, and the shorthand term that we use in our fund for it is like next mission. And what we see is founders who have had a pretty successful run at a company like Roblox or Uber or Amazon. And they're sort of thinking, I'd rather work on something that's really meaningful, that has a kind of mission or relates to a problem that I have or I observe someone else having. And those people are really well connected, and they do have the skills that we need. And if you pair them with someone who also has the lived experience, or you give them the resources to go do that sort of research and understand the problem from a data level, they are the ones now that are also coming into this space to build. And I think that's really promising. It's not that the lived experience founder can't do it, but we kind of need all types to pile into this problem. We need like our best talent coming out of Stanford thinking, hey, building for longevity is really interesting, or building in women's health is going to make me a ton of money. Like, we need that to capture the imagination of the most talented engineers that we have coming out of university right now.
So Peter, I'm gonna, since you are also a lawyer, this is a cold call since I know you weren't prepped for this question, but I wonder, I mean, I know that the work on aging has been the work of your whole life. And how, sort of a similar kind of question, what have you seen that's changed? What is giving you hope at this moment? How are you thinking about the sort of the arc of not just your work, but the arc of the work that's being done?
You know, I see this as first and foremost my day job, which is as a leader in philanthropy. How is philanthropy changing to meet the moment? And so when I hear you talk about basically using capitalism for good, it's what we are now embracing. And Heather, I told you this backstage, but I think everyone should know, thanks to the leadership of the Ford Foundation in using its endowment to basically invest in things for good, we at Next 50 would never have taken the chance of investing the entirety of our $300 million endowment into aging, which is what we've done. And so we need more foundations like that, like you, like us, and I know others in this room, to just put all your money where your mouth is. And that means, and that means a couple things. First, it means, let's look at the individual. I look at my staff. We've purchased long-term care insurance for all our employees. Wow. And it's hard to do because the long-term care insurance market is crumbling.
Expensive, yeah.
But you have to. It's too expensive. Care is too expensive. Systemically, let's start with Colorado. We look at urban and rural areas in Colorado in which to invest. So for example, when you look at rural areas of Colorado, you might be surprised to know that actually in these super wealthy ski towns, it's really expensive to age in place and really expensive to find caregiving. So we've invested in grantees who provide family training, who provide free transportation to get the 80 to 100 miles it takes to go from your home to a doctor's appointment because the only hospital is in a remote back corner of Vail. And then also when you think about the diversity, Colorado is an extraordinarily diverse state. And if you are a queer person living on the western slope in rural Colorado, you're scared to get care. So we've invested in grant partners who provide that kind of inclusive training on site and in trusted partners. And then systemically, using capital for good, or using capitalism for good is really important to us, particularly when it comes to aging. Aging is a mega trend. In the state of Colorado, there are more people over 60 than under 18. We've already hit that mark. And the rest of the country is going to get there in just 3 years. And so for us, the tsunami, even though that's not lovely to say, because who wants to be known as a disaster as you age, is here. And so what we're trying to do is use our $300 million to catalyze others to join in, and have actually partnered with JP Morgan to do that. And they already have clients who are interested in our work and will capitalize that. Catalyze that even further. So I'm excited to answer your question ultimately, that philanthropy is changing and there are more people paying attention to this. And if it means because they're making money, great, we'll just act as traffic cops to make sure it goes for good.
That's great. Thank you. So I wonder, as you sort of think about this moment, as the care economy is something that people understand and are paying attention to, and with their attention comes people and support and money and everything else. I wonder how you're thinking about the risks of this moment and the opportunities of this moment.
So the meta risk, I think, is that, so much of innovation is about reducing friction and creating efficiency. And the thing about human relationships, which is what care is that it's the friction that creates the depth. It's the friction that is the human part. And if you think about the people you love in your life, do you ever not have friction with the people you love? Right? And there's something about at this meta philosophical level, there's just going to be some ways in which we need to preserve the human for all of its everything, the messy, the friction, Now, it doesn't mean there are a lot of things in the way that care is provided, delivered, and received that are unnecessarily causing suffering, that have to do with the way our systems are designed, and there needs to be solutions there. And some of that will be technology, some of that will be other things. We do need innovation there. I think the part that I just want to really protect is the part that is about valuing over and over again the human of care, the humanity in care, even if it has friction, even if it's not that efficient. You know what I mean? Okay, so that's the meta level. And then I think the opportunity is just so, it has the potential to just like turn the way we think about value inside and out. Like, I think if you think about care workers, and there's some care workers sitting here who are members of NEWA, the investment in a care worker is not just an investment in her economic opportunity and mobility and her family and community. It's like it benefits her. There's an economist at Harvard named Larry Katz who calls investments in care work triple dignity investments, because you are investing in the dignity of that worker and her family, and then you are enabling the people who rely on that worker for care to participate in the workforce in a dignified, sustainable way. And then you're enabling the dignity of the person, the older person, the disabled person who that care worker is caring for. You're resourcing that, which it's like invaluable, it's so precious. And then you're also nurturing for childcare workers the human potential of the next generation. I mean, what could be a better investment? Literally, like the ripple effects are not just across the economy, they're across generations. And so if we could think about how we use this moment of disruption and change, and how we think about what we're valuing and why, to revalue that, I think it could be a game changer.
Thank you. Courtney and Peter, I want to ask you basically the same question, given your perspective on the world, but sort of where are the risks, where are the opportunities that you see, or maybe put differently, what keeps you up at night, and what do you dream about? So,
want to go first?
Sure. So when it comes to risks, and I think about risks in the context of the new ideas that we're going to create, sometimes in philanthropy, we feel as though the business community has all the right answers. And so we'll just replicate what works in the business world and apply it to our work. And I think that's a risk. So for example, sure, private equity could make money off of a whole bunch of home care acquisitions. But here's an idea. Why not actually create employee-owned home care agencies? Yeah, and actually, we're going to be doing that next month. And so there's that. The other risk is, again, being a little deferential to Wall Street. And private philanthropy sometimes feels as though they can just defer to their investment advisors as to where their endowments go and are invested in. But what we've said to our advisor is, yeah, no, we don't want to invest in a publicly traded company if there are age discrimination lawsuits against them. Because then we're not investing in our mission of creating a world that values aging. So for me, it's about avoiding, the risks are avoiding the same things over and not avoiding and fixing. We have to correct for the bad actions of the past. And I think at least in philanthropy, we have that flexibility to really, prevent bad things from happening over and over and over again.
Thank you. Courtney, what's your view on this?
Something that has been on my mind for a while, and I'm so glad you touched on it. I think a concern I have is that as money does pile in and there are profits to be made here, I think in the economy, care has sort of functioned like a bond, right? And then the work that comes on the back of care is equity, right? So the bond you just pay, and the person who represents that bond just never gets anything but their money back and a little bit of interest. And the people who rely on and benefit from that care, like that's equity, right? That's a long-term investment in your career, creating huge opportunity and upside. And so I would love to see that change. Like, we need to find a way to build systems where care and caregivers, paid caregivers, unpaid caregivers, have more of the exposure and opportunity to the equity, the upside part of building and rebuilding these systems. And I think that's something that there's a real risk as we build, that we continue to perpetuate this sort of divergent outcome. So it's something that I don't have a great solution to, but it really does concern me. And I think there's examples of industries that have gone before us that have continued to perpetuate that model. In terms of what I think the opportunities are, it's a lot of what you said, and we talked about this before. Like, I think of care as being split into work and love. And actually, some people may view it differently. Some people may think cooking dinner is love, and some people think cooking dinner is work. But we can all agree that, you know, there are elements of the caregiving which are unnecessarily full of friction, and the opportunity to innovate there so that we can direct more time to what you say, like the humanity and the love part of care, and whatever that means to each individual person as best we can, I think is a huge opportunity to reconnect us with our humanity and to bring the discussion and the discourse of care out of a sense of, it's so hard, it's so awful, you know, it's like, we're talking about our kids, we're talking about our parents, like, it's actually great, it's wonderful. And I wish, you know, for us that we can get to the point where we have been able to innovate around the hard and taxing parts to be able to enjoy the love parts more. I think a lot of that will come from talking more about men in care and the role that men play as caregivers and normalizing care for everyone. I think there's interesting components to male fertility, male contraception, like those are some very cool opportunities. Yeah, so I think we've got some really cool fields that we can expand into. So those are some things I'm excited about.
Can I say one more thing? Please.
I just think one of the things I feel like the lesson of this era is that really, and I started the day with this, which is that there is this risk as more money and interest comes in that we try to find market solutions only instead of working on how we actually build infrastructure that we need, that the market is never going to build as a country, so that we can actually support families at scale. I don't think the market is going to replace the role of government in solving and addressing this challenge and opportunity. But I also don't think government can do it alone at all. And so I just think we need to have that conversation about how it comes together in a way that looks ahead, sees around the corner, and sees some of these opportunities that you all name, and thinks about how it might affect how we think about the role of government in this next era.
So I want to do two things. First, I just want to ask you to join me in thanking this extraordinary panel for the work that they're doing. And second, as I close this out, I thought I would just reflect. One of the words that Ai-jen used was ripen, and that we're in a moment of harvesting here. And I just want to say to you how different in some ways, without downplaying in any way how hard all of this work is and how much work there is left to do, how different this feels than a lot of the conversations that we've been having with our partners inside the building, folks who do immigration work, folks who do racial equality work. It's been a time of reflection. And the reason why it just really, that phrase from Ai-jen struck me is because Sherilyn Ifill wrote a really beautiful Substack post, if you haven't read it, talking about how she felt like her generation, our generation, was able to basically benefit from the harvest. You know, that for many years, the things that had been planted by the prior generation, we were reaping the harvest. And she told us, don't give up, don't cede to the backlash, but now is the time to imagine. This is your opportunity to plant. And I just feel like we should not end this conference without thanking the person who, alongside all of you, did so much of the planting work. So let's give the last word to Ai-jen.